Hey, Pancho, how are you?
Good, and you?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time for being here with all of us. Okay, and well, Josh, can you please tell us a little bit more about you?
My name is Joshua Rappaport. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I moved to Mexico permanently in 2003. I've been working in the mortgage industry here in Mexico since 2006. In the mortgage industry, I worked for a mortgage broker, and then after about 4.5 years, I decided to become independent and open up my own company, Cross Border Investment. And I've had the company mortgage services. We also provide the closing services. And I found that was really important because in the States and Canada, we're used to the mortgage broker obtaining the approval and the file being turned over to an attorney or an external source. Here, I just find that that's a little bit difficult here in Vallarta, in Mexico in general, just because the transactions we do for mortgages are so unique in terms of a foreigner getting a mortgage through a Mexican bank, purchasing a property in Mexico, feeding a bank trust, etc., that I found it was really necessary to make sure that our clients have good service and that everything gets done in a timely fashion. That if we really provide the entire package, the one-stop shop, as they say, from the very beginning of the process, throughout loan approval, throughout the trust, escrow, appraisal, due diligence of the property, through closing.
So I think it's a very exciting business and to help people to make their dream comes true, no?
Yeah, I mean, I thank you for saying that. I think that people think we're the boring part of purchasing real estate. It's like usually when clients, most of our clients are foreigners. So usually, they come down here and they're here like a week or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it is, and they're looking at property. And usually they don't want to meet with us because we're like the boring part of the process.
Please tell us what people need to have in order to start with if they want to get a loan, what they need to do if they knock your door, say, okay, I want to buy this place. I spoke with Poncho, I spoke with other real estate agent here in Puerto Vallarta, Rivera Nayarit. What they need to know, at least the basics. What do you have in mind, or what you can share with us?
Sure. The basic, in general terms, as things currently stand, the qualification requirements, the minimum requirements are that the client has the down payment and the closing costs available. So that usually represents 40% of the value of the purchase. Okay. So that's a basic. The other basic would be that the client is healthy enough to qualify for life insurance. Here in Mexico, virtually all financial products require life insurance. And with mortgages, often because the loan amounts are higher, often clients actually have to do medical testing to qualify for the life insurance. So those are the two basics. And the third basic would be that the client has income sufficient to be able to qualify for the mortgage, to be able to make his monthly payment. Now, the debt to income ratios is what we know that phrase as in terms of qualifying a client. The debt to income ratios in Mexico are much more lax than we're used to in the States and Canada. So I really focus on, in terms of qualifying a client, I really do focus on their down payment, that they have the money available for the cash to close. And I also really focus on the fact that they can qualify for health insurance, for life insurance, not health insurance. It's going to be required. And for loan amounts, usually above $160,000, the client has to do medical testing. So the medical testing would be blood, urine, and an EKG. So if a client has a chronic health issue, like diabetes, insulin-taking diabetes, then yeah, they would be rejected for life insurance, and therefore they wouldn't be able to obtain the mortgage. Now, somebody in Zoom asked a question. U.S. life insurance cannot be substituted here in Mexico. It cannot be used. The insurance has to be provided via Mexican insurance provider. Okay, well, I'll tell you, I'll be very frank about this. The products that we work with for foreigners, we developed them. We developed them several years ago. And it was kind of, to be honest, it was under the assumption and the promise that those products were going to be exclusively offered via my company all across Mexico. The reality is because it was never actually signed, they didn't want to sign it at the time for reasons. And as a result, nowadays, technically the banks themselves can receive clients directly. But the reality is the banks that we use for foreigners are very small So long story short, so technically clients can go to the bank and get a loan directly, but these banks are smaller banks. They don't have, they don't even have presence in Puerto Vallarta, in Cancun, in Playa del Carmen. They just have, they have they have offices, corporate offices in Mexico City, basically. They're banks that really focus on specialty products, so savings and mortgages. And even we've heard of a few clients trying to go to the bank directly. And I've heard a few stories of clients going to the bank directly, and the bank ends up calling us and saying that they have no idea to do certain parts of the transaction because we do pretty much all of the transaction. So we've heard horror stories about clients trying to go to a bank directly, and either the client himself just gets lost in the process, or the bank doesn't provide the proper information, or the bank doesn't know how certain processes because we just naturally do them. So I would personally never recommend going directly to a bank, even if you're a Mexican national, to be honest. I mean, here at my office, we have contracts with 10 different banks. And of those banks, not all of them will lend to foreigners. So obviously, if someone's going to call us and they're going to request information that corresponds to a non-resident of Mexico, so to an American or a Canadian purchasing here, then yeah, we would obviously focus on the loan products that correspond to that client profile. Someone asked if life insurance is required if you purchase a property in cash. No, if you purchase a property in cash, life insurance would not be required. Life insurance is part of a mortgage to make sure that if you were to die while you have an outstanding balance on your mortgage, the mortgage would be paid off. Okay. Things have changed, obviously, like everyone is experiencing. How they've changed with a lot of the banks in general, they're giving troubles for clients who work in certain industries. So for example, if someone works directly in tourism, they're making it a little bit more difficult for them to get approved. Now that's not across the board. The banks we work with for foreigners, which are also available for Mexican nationals, clients who document their income and credit here in Mexico, those banks, because they require the big down payment, the 30% plus closing costs, they are very flexible in terms of income documentation. So there's not a huge concern with their policies have not changed as of yet. Where things have changed with those banks is just their work structure. Again, because they're in Mexico City, their corporates are in Mexico City. And Mexico City, I think they just changed status with COVID yesterday. With Mexico City, they're all been working from home. So when you're dealing with the bank and bureaucracy and all that, and everyone's working from home, in banks, you need like 1 million authorizations for everything, et cetera. So with everyone working from home, it's just been tighter. It's just been a slower process. But everything, I mean, in terms of loan conditions, in terms of general processes, everything has pretty much changed the same. It remained the same. Where things have changed is with the more traditional loan products, where they are tightening down on certain industries where they've been severely affected by COVID.
What is the interest rates that Mexico provides to people if they get a loan here? Just an average.
Sure. So a lot of people in Mexico are used to hearing, like the 7.5 to 9-10% range, which those mortgages definitely do exist, and those mortgages we definitely do offer. But the mortgages that we primarily work with for non-residents, they have significantly lower interest rates. They have interest rates between 2.4 to 3.6%. Okay. Now, how do they charge such low interest rates? The reason they charge higher commissions. They charge a higher upfront fee, basically. So the closing costs are going to be higher, but the client is going to have the benefit of a much lower interest rate. So for pretty much all foreigners or all non-residents, the interest rate is going to be between 2.4 to 3.6%. And the interest rate would really be dependent on their down payment. So if they do a 30% down payment, which is the minimum down payment, they'll be getting the 3.6%. If they do a 40% down payment, they would be getting 2.4%.
Clients ask me if they need to have a credit card here in Mexico in order to apply for a loan, or just with the information that you told us before is just enough, or how that works?
The mortgages that we work with for the majority of our clients who are non-residents, they don't need any ties to Mexico. So they do not need residency status. They do not need a bank account in Mexico. They do not need a credit card in Mexico, no employment. We would use all their documentation. So their passport, their birth certificate from their home country, their tax returns, bank statements, credit report from their home country. They don't need to have any ties to Mexico whatsoever. Now, of course, if a client is going to have ties to Mexico, like what happens on a relatively regular basis is we do a mortgage for a client, and by doing them, because all the banks we work with are Mexican banks, we're opening up a client profile for that client here in Mexico. So what often happens is we have a client who does a mortgage, and then 2 or 3 years later, he comes back or she comes back and they want to buy another property with a mortgage. Now that they have a client profile here in Mexico, they will have additional options available to them as well. But for a client who has absolutely no ties to Mexico, they come here as a tourist or a vacation or whatever you want to call it, and they're just ready to purchase a property here, whether it be for personal or for commercial use, rental income. They don't have to have any ties to Mexico in order to qualify for a mortgage.
Can you please tell us a little bit more about what those extra services that you provide as cross-border investment? Can you please tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. I mean, what ends up happening, because, like realtors, I'm sure will have a similar experience. You deal with a client for so long, you on our end, we get to know the client kind of inside and out, because, all sorts of documentation we have to look through, all their employment verification, all that kind of stuff. So clients end up really having a lot of faith in us, which is something we take very seriously. So a lot of the services, clients will often ask us millions of questions after we close the transaction. How to pay their property tax, how to move money down to Mexico, all that kind of stuff that we all do on good faith. But in general, the two principal services that we provide to our clients is we provide the mortgage services, and then we also provide the closing coordination services. As we know, although I work in mortgages and I've been working in mortgages for 14 years, the reality is that the majority of non-residents or foreigners, the majority being like 90%, purchase properties in cash. They're bringing down money however they get it from the States, whether it's a HELOC or a line of credit or liquidating an asset in the States, they bring down cash. But they still need somebody to assist them with the entire legal process of closing on a property. And that's something that we do as well. At my office, we have attorneys on staff. An attorney will be involved in any transaction. And so the attorneys are the people who will do the due diligence on the property, and they'll do the writing of the deed, they'll order your trust, they'll open escrow, they'll help you with your distributions to escrow, et cetera, et cetera. And so, just so everyone understands how that all started, the closing coordination services was many, many years ago. I did for a brand new building it was a brand new building many, many years ago. We all know the building very well. It's still a very successful building. It's still a very sought after building. And anyways, the developer, we did the very first closing. The very first legal closing they did was with a mortgage. And the developer just really liked the way that we were so detail oriented, et cetera. And so he called me and he asked me if he could just give me the building. Give me all the clients in the building and do all their closings. And in the end, I think in the first building, there was 65 units, something like that. In the second building, there was another 65 units. And I think we only did 2 mortgages between all the 130 units, but we ended up doing 130 closings. So because of that, that's how I just figured, if people are happy with their services in general, and this is an additional service we can provide, happy to do it.
Does the person that works there in your legal department, it's able to check the deed or the condominium regime or things like that that we request in their standard offer? Is that okay for you guys? Is something that you do, or do you recommend that they hire a lawyer, or you can do that too?
No, that's exactly what they do. That's exactly what the attorneys do at my office. They review through the condo regime. They're the ones who order the trust. They're the ones who know the legalities of the property inside and out. They assist with writing up sales contracts. The people who are attorneys in my office, they all come from notary's office. That's how they all got started.
That's great.
And so we basically fish them, for lack of a better term, or they found us, and they started working for us. So these are people who well-educated and come from experience. And now that they've been with me for at my company for a couple of years, they also really understand the way I like to do things. I've been working in mortgages for 14 years, but I've been living in Mexico for 17 years. And I think that kind of one of the benefits that I have as a person and the philosophy I inspire in my business is, we have to marry, the way people expect to do business in the United States and Canada with the way business is done here in Mexico. We have a lot of people who come here and they expect, from the States and Canada, and they expect everything to be exactly like what they're used to at home. And the reality is that's not the truth. I mean, we're in Mexico and things do work a little bit differently. But what we really try and do is just marry those two. Allow clients to understand why things work a certain way and how it's like comparable to what they might be used to in the States. So my attorneys, they understand that kind of culture.
Perfect. So what are the general loan conditions that you can share with us, please?
Sure. So the basic loan conditions are you have to have at least a 30% down plus your closing costs. Okay. Your interest rate. I'm talking specifically about non-residents. Okay.
Yeah.
So foreigners. So 30% down, 2.4 to 3.6% interest rate, amortization up to 15 years, and the mortgage, because we're admitting all the mortgages that we work with are admitted via Mexican financial institutions. That means your mortgage payments are going to be in pesos. So what we do is at the closing, we assist you with opening up a bank account here, and you just have the money. You would have to make sure that every month you have the sufficient amount of pesos in that bank account to make your monthly payments.
So the closing cost when it's a loan involved is higher than
Yes.
How much? Because I know that, for example, for me, when it's a cash deal, it's between 4 to 7%. How much is the percentage when a loan is involved?
Sure. So yeah, exactly. When it's a cash transaction, it's a 4 to 7%, like what you mentioned, what Pancho mentioned. Now, with the mortgage, what you have to pay those cash transaction fees anyways, because the cash transaction fees are referring to your trust. They're referring to the taxes to transfer title, the due diligence on the property, escrow, etc. So all those fees would apply with a mortgage transaction as well, obviously. And then the additional fees that correspond to a mortgage really correspond to commissions. Okay. And so what those usually work out to be is around another 4 to 5%. So usually what clients are looking at in total is around 10% of the purchase price and total closing costs. So that's why I say to clients, in terms of your cash you need to make the purchase, you have to have your 30% in down payment, and then you have to have your 10% in closing costs. So you have to have 40% available in cash. Yeah, well, let me add on something as well. A question we get often is, what can the mortgage be used for? Now, obviously, the majority of our clients are using the mortgage to purchase a property, to purchase a condo or a house that's fully constructed. Okay, it's important to note that there's no pre-sale mortgages available. We know that there's a lot of pre-sale properties, whether here in Vallarta or Playa del Carmen, especially.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, the bank needs a collateral, and they need the collateral to be in the buyer's name, in the borrower's name. And so with pre-construction, there's no collateral. So that's why there is no mortgages available in Mexico for pre-construction loans. The mortgages can be used for purchasing a house or a condo, and the mortgages can also be used for purchasing a commercial space, for purchasing a lot. What we do not have available are construction loans. So if a client's going to purchase a lot and construct, my recommendation, when possible, is to finance as much as you can of the lot, leaving your cash available to build. Those are the main purposes. But I mean, you could buy a store if you wanted to.
So do you have service also in Playa del Carmen, Los Cabos, Acapulco, or just specifically here?
No, over all the years, I actually started the company. I'll just tell you guys a little anecdote here. I hope to not bore you. But I started the company right when the financial crisis hit of 2009. And it wasn't like planned, obviously. So what ended up happening was I got very lucky that the financial crisis hit, and a developer in Playa del Carmen gave me a building. He gave me a building to do all the mortgages on. And so I ended up doing like 30 mortgages in a year that nobody was doing anything. So we've always, throughout the years, we've done mortgages all across Mexico. The only thing that limits us is the property has to be able to be deeded. Okay, that's not a huge limitation. But we actually attend all of our closings. So one of the attorneys in my office, the attorney that's been assigned to the case and working the case from the beginning, would actually attend to the closing. So we do most of our transactions are, I would say about 60% are here in Vallarta, and the rest are kind of spread out, and it changes. But Playa del Carmen, Los Cabos, San Miguel de Allende, Hualtuco. I think someone's doing one in Oaxaca City next month. So I mean, there's closings all across the country.
That's great. So how people can find you online, social media, or what?
Yeah, of course. I mean, our website is crossborderinvestment.com. That's all singular, all one word, no spaces, no underscores. You can also send me an email. So my email is Josh at crossborderinvestment.com. And obviously, we don't have a corporate Instagram account, but I mean, a lot of you are probably seeing my Instagram panhandle, so you can send me a message and I'll provide you with my contact information because my email's not that easy. But if you contact us via the website or if you send me an email directly, of course, we'll attend to you right away.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you so much. Something else that you want to add?
No? Anything I want to add?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were waiting for somebody to put a comment.
No.
Just, what I would, like, going back to, I already said it, but I'll just repeat it. It's always worth just, reviewing through your options and seeing if this is the right path for you. So, one of the things we do on a regular basis is we just talk to clients. We say, your purchase price is $300,000. Here's what your mortgage is going to look like. And I mean, that's something we do on a daily basis. So, feel free to contact us with any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. I know that you have an appointment to do very fast, very soon. So thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that attend this Zoom webinar, and for the ones that attend this on Instagram. And thank you, Josh. And this is gonna be posted on my social media. And thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.